Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-A Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
And then there were two.
Wow. Feels weird, not going to lie. This feels weird.
It is weird. This show might be really short.
Or long.
Oh, wait, no. It's you and me, so it'll be just as long.
Super long. Yeah, our colleague usually was the ref and would make sure we stayed on schedule. So we're kind of in trouble on that.
He would steer us back right. What's up? Jeff and Eric with you here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Minus our dearly departed Murph, who, as we said, as he mentioned to us last week, has moved on to greener pastures with MLB, and so it's me and Eric for the time being. But we still have a lot to talk about here. We will talk about men's soccer, obviously their incredible run, finally breaking through in the American Athletic Conference Tournament. We'll hear from head coach Scott Calabrese. We'll hear from Yannick Ertl as well. We'll talk about men's and women's tennis as they finish up their regular seasons. They're heading to the American, starting their long run at home in the conference tournament and then the NCAA. We got some basketball news. One departure and one, not really departure, maybe. And plenty of other things to talk about. Eric's going to talk about softball. We got lots to talk about here in segment 3. But we start here in our first segment with UCF men's soccer. It had been since 2004, Eric Lopez, that UCF had won a tournament in men's soccer. The last 3 years, they've been stopped in the championship of the American, the championship match, by the SMU Mustangs, twice in extra time, once on a golden goal, once in shootout. SMU stopped them in the postseason. SMU has been their bugaboo, and lo and behold, UCF in their third straight year of winning the regular season title, hosting the tournament, UCF has to face SMU in the semifinals. Well, they go to penalty kicks, and they beat them on Thursday night, and then UCF has to face a very tough Tulsa team that was, I thought, well prepared for the match. But UCF gets a goal in the 9th minute and then holds off Tulsa on offense. Tulsa had some golden chances, one with 2 minutes to go. It was a wide open net, and the guy and their guy hit the side of the net with the shot. But that was it. And UCF, in back of Yannick Ertl, who had 14 saves for the tournament, including a career-high 9 in that SMU game. I mean, it was a virtuoso performance for him in that semifinal. Wins the most outstanding defensive player, and the Knights have won the American on Sunday night, 1-0 over Tulsa, and they are headed to the NCAAs, where they will face James Madison, who is undefeated this year. Even though
they love to serve undefeated teams to UCF in all postseason,
don't they? Isn't it funny how it works out like that? But they will face James Madison in the field of 36 this year. So UCF ends up getting a bye to the second round, but there are only 4 first-round games, right? So here we are. Finally the ghosts of SMU have been exercised. They beat SMU 3 times this season, including in the championship round. Did so in dramatic fashion. Still had another match to win, but they did it. It was a grueling weekend for this team. But they got through, Eric, and they deserve it, don't they?
They did, and one guy in particular, which is, to me, the tournament was about the legacy of Yannick Ertl, the goalkeeper. You got to see it up close doing PA. Pulled on a show. That performance against SMU might be the best performance right now that any UCF athletes had this year. And you think about it, his legacy just skyrocketed. He's a 3-time now American Conference Goalie of the Year. That performance in the semi against SMU, and then counting that with a championship at home against Tulsa with a shutout, I think you can make the argument now. I said last week he's a top 3 goalkeeper of all time in UCF men's soccer behind Winston DeBose and Rick Brentsevic. You can make the argument now that he has, with that tournament, he surpassed Brentsevic at least to number 2. I can't put him ahead of DeBose yet because that legacy, that's a whole, that's a different category. That's a Florida Sports Hall of Famer. Yeah. But Yannick Ertl, this was his tournament, and it's funny because he was kind of under the shadow of Cal Jennings the last couple of years. This was, the last couple of years it was Cal Jennings' team. He was the face of the program. I think this year, this was Yannick's team. You saw that up close with the leadership he's shown, what a difference maker he is when he missed the 2 matches. And I think his performance were amazing. Quite frankly, they were outplayed in that SMU match. I think even Coach Calabrese admitted that after the match. But Yannick Ertl stole that match for them. And they have the confidence to win with him. And to me, that's his legacy, to help this program get the double. The double. As Coach Cromwell used to tell me, it's about getting that double, which is the regular season title and the conference tournament title in the same year. Not easy to do. But now Calabrese gets over that hump and does it. And just to do it at home. And again, they were 1-3 to start the year. To get to this point is pretty remarkable with no room to err, because as we saw in the selection process, only 1 team from the American got in, which surprised me a little bit. Mm-hmm. So who knows if UCF doesn't win the tournament, automatic bid, if they even get in or not. So clutch performance for Yannick Ertl. This is a legacy tournament for him. This was his team. We'll see now what happens in the NCAA tournament. I would argue they had one of the toughest matchups in their round of 32. It's 2 of the top goalkeepers in college soccer right now going head-to-head in the second round, which is amazing to me. But a heck of a tournament run, a memorable moment, and a memorable run for this program.
The numbers on Ertl ever since that 1-3 start, where it looked like things were unraveling for this team, right? UCF as a team has won or has gone unbeaten now in 8 in a row. Ertl himself has given up just 2 goals in regulation in his last 7 matches, I should say, since that first game at SMU. That was his first game back. And they got the overtime win against South Florida. The only goals he gave up were to SMU in the American Championship semis, and then also another one to SMU back on April the 2nd. That was that Friday game back here at home. So, and no one else has scored on Yannick Ertl since. I think you're right. I think his legacy is secure, but now he gets the chance to really boost it, as does this team in the NCAA championship, starting with number 17 James Madison. We talked to Coach Calabrese after the selection, and here's what he had to say about how he felt about how his team was respected by the NCAA, getting the bye for the 2nd straight year.
Yeah, I think we're respected. I think our conference is respected, because I do think that's part of it. That shows that they feel like our conference was strong enough to test us to a point where they say, okay, their record is really meaningful. That they played strong opponents, which I totally. Every game in our conference is a big game and a difficult game. So I think it says something about us. I think it says something about all the opponents that we played. I think it's good that we have that bye, because we're beat up. Anytime you play 2 games in 48 hours, there's consequences for our players. So. It's good actually that we're able to get some time to get our players healthy and rested and re-energized and recovered, so that we can be at our best come match day.
Well, you could hear the relief in Scott's voice as he knew that they didn't have to get that extra. They didn't have to sweat it out for an at-large bid like they had to the last 3 seasons. But interesting though, in the field of 36, UCF was the only team in the American to get in. I'm curious as to whether or not they would have let UCF in had they lost the championship game to Tulsa. Something about that. I would like to think that they probably would, that they may have. I think Tulsa was just too far away on the outside looking in. But we could be wrong. We don't know. Now they have to face this James Madison team that we talked about, and you mentioned earlier, Eric, one of the best goalkeepers in the entire country. They've allowed a grand total of, I think, 2 goals all season.
Yep, T.J. Bush is their redshirt senior goalkeeper, who was the 80th overall pick in this past year's MLS Super Draft. He was drafted by the Seattle Sounders, and that's pretty high praise. And yet, fortunately for JMU, he chose to stay in college. He didn't just go ahead and sign his pro deal for whatever reason. So he's really good. It's a great matchup of 2 young goalkeepers. Obviously, the schedules are totally different. This is like a 15 versus 18 matchup if you really break it down, with Pittsburgh being the likely winner as a number 2 overall seed. So I kind of feel like UCF was seeded like 15 or 18 range there versus James Madison. It's an even matchup, and it's going to be interesting which team can kind of break through offensively. This UCF offense not as explosive as it was the last couple years. This is more of a defensive team, really. If you look at it, with Yanis Lehrman playing great in the back, and then obviously Yannick, Lucas Dorado had the goal in the championship match.
He had both regulation goals. He was the offensive player of the tournament.
But I would not be surprised. I think you're going to see a similar matches that what you saw in the conference tournament, which is very, maybe somebody gets a goal in there. If not, this could be decided by penalty kicks with these 2 great goalkeepers that honestly have a pro future in sights here. We're seeing 2 future pros here.
We could be sitting there for a while with no goals in this game. This one could go to PKs scoreless. I really do believe that. You look at JMU. They're first in the country in team goals against average, 0.231 goals against per game. They are first in save percentage, 93%. First in shutout percentage, 75% of their games have ended in shutouts. Interesting, they're also top 10 in corners per game, but they do struggle in terms of scoring. They're only so they do kind of struggle offensively. UCF has shown fits and starts offensively this season. Right now they're 24th in team goals against average and 4th in save percentage. But this is going to be a good matchup. The good thing is for UCF though, Eric, they got 2 weeks to rest up for this game before they go to Cary, North Carolina, because the tournament doesn't start until the end of April, and UCF's game isn't until May the 2nd at 5 p.m. So.
Great
they
slot,
desperately
by the
need. Yes,
this better be. Is this televised? It's volleyball, or do we need volleyball people to complain about this as well? Because no, seriously, the College Cup has never been covered before in the early rounds. We were kind of spoiled here at UCF last year. The last time when UCF played, we got to cover it. Not every school does that. UCF trying to make a second straight Sweet 16, by the way, in program history, which would be that's insane if they could pull that off.
It doesn't say if it's televised yet or not.
Well, I hope it is, because I'm very curious how they're going to handle that. Remember, they got the men's and the women's both in Cary, North Carolina, with the 36 and the 48 team field. So,
and in various places around Cary too. The specific location for this game is the J. Burt Gillette Athletic Complex, which is just off of Toysnet Park, I think it's.
I'm glad you know this.
I don't know where. No, I'm not sure where this is. This is near Barton College in Cary, North Carolina, closer to Wilson, North Carolina.
Yeah. But this is a toss-up match. This is a top. JMU. I think you mentioned they're ranked. Both teams are ranked.
Yeah.
Right? 17, depending on which polls you look at. This is a legit toss-up match. It really reminds me of 2019 when UCF got paired up with Missouri State. Missouri State was undefeated, but was not seeded, which, was a controversial thing by the committee. UCF was the national 9 seed, which obviously that was controversial in itself. And I was fortunate enough to call that match. That was a dramatic match that went into overtime. I'll never forget Gino Vivi with the cross to Cal Jennings. And ironically enough, Cal Jennings' last kick at home was in the back of the net to send UCF to its first ever Sweet 16 in program history. Now, we'll see if they can do this for a second year, or I don't know. Do you call this a second year in a row? I think you do, right? This counts as 2 years.
Yeah,
so,
it's interesting. I was in PA. That officially, it was called the 2020 American Athletic Conference Men's Soccer Championship because it was supposed to be in the fall.
They kind of took a page from the NFL. They took a page out of the NFL playbook. You know how the NFL used to, like, every year the playoffs, well, this is the 2019 playoffs, even though it's 20, you know what I mean? So it makes sense. All right, so we've learned this one thing. From now on, you need to be the PA guy for UCF men's soccer tournaments to win.
I don't know, man.
They couldn't win a conference tournament without you. Now you show up to do PA and they win the conference tournament. All right, Coach I'm just saying.
I don't know, man. Like, that was a grueling weekend. I don't know if the players would be in favor of that because they're completely exhausted after that. I don't blame. And
if I'm not mistaken, now you've called the American Championship in volleyball too, right? You did that when UCF hosted, and now you did it for men's soccer. That's pretty good
correct.
Double dip. And UCF won both tournaments.
I'm not going to complain. I'm just saying if we, you know what? Hey,
give them a ring,
if we're hosting, if we host a championship. Hey, I'm available, guys.
Chris Walsh, whoever's making those decisions, call them.
Call me up, man. I'm ready to do it. If the coaches think I'm a good luck charm, I am more than happy to oblige them on that. So, again, May the 2nd is UCF and JMU. We'll update you on TV once we get a little bit more information on that. But UCF and James Madison should be
that's a toss-up match. That is that's really one of the top matchups in the round 32. It's amazing. It's really I do hope it's televised because I do think we're seeing two guys in Bush and obviously in Yannick. They're going to play professionally. I think Bush obviously is towards the United States. I think it sounds to me like Yannick's more on the European side.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Yannick back home in the Bundesliga.
Yeah,
post haste.
Could be a guy, right? That could be in the mix for Germany down the road.
Yeah. A team. I certainly would think he's a Team Germany prospect at least. I don't know if he's in the international system for them or not. But
if there's not, he should be.
If he's not, he should be, and he hopefully will be now. In that second round, by the way, Pitt, who awaits the winner of this game, 9th in the country in scoring offense, 2.38 goals a game. So that's quite the challenge.
But wow. I mean, but if UCF were to win, though, boy, doesn't that sound like a track meet? That sounds like a track meet. Like UCF, I mean, you saw it. UCF's not afraid to go up and down on the field. That SMU match.
I think that's what shows you what's good about this team is that they're not a one-trick pony. They can beat you in multiple styles. I think that's the part that I think you have to be happy about. By the way, Pitt would play. Pitt still has a game to get through before they would face the winner of James Madison and UCF, by the way. They would face the winner of Bowling Green and Monmouth.
Obviously, Pitt will be a heavy favorite. Pitt from the dominant, I believe they're in the ACC as well.
ACC, that's right. Yeah.
Which I believe has Clemson's the number 1 overall. See, the ACC is the superpower of college men's soccer deal there. And look,
North Carolina's in the field from the ACC. Yep. You got Wake. I almost said Maryland, but they're not in the ACC.
Who are the top national seeds? What is it? Clemson's 1, Pitt's
Yeah, Clemson's 1. Indiana is 3 out of the Big Ten. You got Georgetown and Seton Hall out of the Big East at 8 and 6, respectively. Washington's the 7, Wake is the 5, Stanford at 4. So you're looking at ACC. Pitt's the 2 seed, so you're looking ACC, Pac-12, Big Ten. Big East. Those are your 4 major ones.
I tend to agree with you. I think if UCF would have lost, I like to think they would have snuck in. I'm glad we're not in that position because I'd rather not. Because who knows? With a 36-team field, who knows? I think they would have snuck in. I think Tulsa was probably kind of one of those things. The way they finished the season probably didn't help them. Plus, they haven't, UCF's got a track record recently here, making a Sweet 16 and stuff.
And Tulsa's also, they're kind of the new kid on the block. I think if you flip them with SMU, I think SMU has enough cachet, right, stored up that they probably could have gotten an at-large, but they got knocked out in the semifinals. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to Coach Calabrese once this is all done, how he feels about, because him and I, he's talked to us, Jeff, about the 2-semester sport.
yeah,
And I'm curious now that he's gone through it in the spring version, if he feels any different. Does he feel strongly more about it? I'm very interested, but he's got bigger things to worry about right now. We got plenty of time to catch up with him about that, but I'm just excited for it. I'm happy they got in. It's a heck of a story, a heck of a coaching job. This guy is amazing, and let's just hope nobody else figures that out.
well, except I will say that except for one place,
Mm-hmm.
2 places, Team USA,
Oof, they could use
or Orlando City.
Well, City made the playoffs last year, so I mean that they always.
Yeah, but
if he's a Team USA now, that's a very more valid point. I mean, they just missed the Olympics again, the men's program in U.S. soccer. So that.
yeah, I mean that whole thing needs a rebuild in a hurry.
Yeah. By the way, credit Tiffany Roberts-Hadak recommended him to Danny White.
Yep, absolutely,
and
that's
it's
worked
pretty
out.
remarkable. Yeah.
So, all right, let's switch gears real quick. There's some news today out of basketball. Jason Beatty reported this first from 247, so we got to give him credit for it. But C.J. Walker has announced that he's going to test the NBA draft waters. He did so on his social media. Now, bear in mind, Isaiah Adams has already done this, announced that, but we talked about it on a previous show. We do believe that he will he's doing basically what Darren Green, both these guys are doing, what Darren Green and Taco Fall did before for them, is they go through the pre-draft process, they get their evaluations from the scouts that are there and the GMs that are there, and we tend to believe that it's likely they will come back. You never know, but I personally think it's more likely than not that they will return in 2021 and come back to UCF for at least one more year, the two of them. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I agree. Unless somebody gives them bad advice. I mean, right? I mean that's you never know who gives advice, who they listen to, and things like that. But I mean, yeah, I would think those two. And again,
well, that's the whole reason why they do this, though, is to get is so that they're not relying on the advice of their
right.
quote camp end quote. They're
right,
relying on the advice of
I wish,
their
right.
of the actual people who would be making those decisions.
I wish there was a different way to do it instead of, hey, I gotta declare for the draft to get this information instead, because people always like the headlines is very misleading, right? Like, oh, I'm declaring, and oh my God, what is he thinking? No, well, he's just trying to get information. So, I expect those two to be back, but look, as Brian and we've talked about in past episodes, I mean, why not? You've got it. Yeah. It's in your disposal. Get all that information that you can get, and then make those decisions. I mean, both of those guys are interested in playing professional basketball. That's no secret. So they want to see where they're at.
Certainly talented enough to do it at some point in their lives.
At some point, I don't believe not right now, but they're going to try to find out where are they? What do they need to work on? What do they need to do? This is just this is going to be a part of the process. They're not the only ones. There's a lot of other guys that have done the same thing in college. This is college basketball in a nutshell now.
Yeah, but we'll take a look at that. When the time comes. What's the date for them to undeclare, Eric? I know you guys keep saying that it's right before the draft, right?
Yeah, I want to say that May 30th, I believe, would be the deadline. I think May 30th to apply for this year. That's the deadline to stay.
May 30th. You're right. Yep.
So, you got time to get all the info you need to do, and we'll see what happens. I mean,
boy, there are a lot of underclassmen that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's always my concern about this. What happens is, because the NBA draft is only 2 rounds, is you're going to end up with more guys declaring than they probably I shouldn't say should, but the bottom line is not everybody's going to get drafted. And look, and some guys may not care. Some guys might just say, I'm good just playing in the G League, or I just want to move on. Every case is different, and we'll see what happens. Like I said, CJ Walker's, I will say this, if there's one of the two is likely to go, I think it's Walker.
I agree. Because he's shown to me that NBA ready.
Well, and he's big. He's a big body.
Yeah, he's super, super athletic, can jump out of the gym. Yes. If either one of them leave, it's most likely going to be CJ. However, I still think there's a less than 50% chance that he does leave.
I agree with that.
But I also think it's a non-zero chance too.
I agree. I agree with that. I think that's fair. I would not be shocked by too many things there. Do you think in football they'll ever get to that point where they allow the football guys declare quote unquote, but come back and get information in the NFL side? Do you ever think that day comes? Because I've always been curious.
I think it would be. I think it would be a smart thing for the NFL to do, especially when you can. However, what I worry about is how
part of the issue is the college football. You have to stay 2 years at least.
You have to be 2 years removed from your high school graduation at a minimum in order to do that. I think that the chief issue there is what do you do with, it would become a major administrative hassle. Now, if anyone can handle that, it's the NFL, but you're already drafting how many guys in the NFL draft? 400 some players.
Right.
So not to mention, and that doesn't include obviously all the free agent signings and whatnot. If you throw in every, junior and sophomore and perhaps even freshman a year early, because I think they would have to bump it down. You can be any age in order to get that evaluation. Boy, you're going to be talking like. Well,
I'm not even let's just say
a couple thousand guys searching for an evaluation.
Let's just say they keep the rules the way it is, where you can't declare until you're like a redshirt sophomore or a junior. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, hey, maybe certain sophomores or juniors that declare can, instead of, they can declare but get that information and then come back. And I always think of Jacoby Glenn. Remember Jacoby Glenn had that monster year, and apparently he got advice from a relative or something. He declared he didn't get drafted. Now, to his credit, he worked his way into the NFL and things like that. Guys like that, I wonder if that would benefit if they can get information from legitimate people, not relatives, before declaring, or if they can declare
or agents, right? If they, well, they're not supposed to be talking to agents, but
it's just interesting that basketball can do it. And granted, it's a smaller draft compared to football, but yet football, which has, to me, football's more critical because basketball, there's a ton of options for guys. They can make it in the NBA. They could play in Europe. We've discussed this at length. There's no options in football. It's either the NFL or maybe the CFL. And I just read where the CFL now is pushed back to August for a start, which is really fascinating because what happens to guys in the CFL that want to play in the NFL? So because there's no spring football and that hasn't worked out for various reasons, there's really only one option for football, and that's the NFL. And whereas basketball, there's more options. So if a guy doesn't get drafted, like our boys Jermaine Taylor and Keith Clatton, these guys have played overseas. Football doesn't have that luxury, and I just wonder if there's we could help those guys in football that maybe shouldn't have gotten should have declared and maybe go undrafted. Help them out from an information standpoint. Because I know we had this discussion after each of the UCF guys that are in this draft, like next week. What some of those UCF guys that are not going to get drafted, could they have benefited from maybe talking to NFL people and then take advantage and come back for an extra year, for example, if they didn't get drafted, instead of, I just got to sign. I'm not saying they would have come back. I'm just saying an extra option.
Could they have benefited if the XFL was still around, or the Alliance for that matter? Maybe. I know I keep banging that drum, but those are developmental leagues.
Well, right? It's going to be interesting once we get closer back to normal. We've discussed this in the past. The Rock owns the XFL. There's been some reports that the XFL has talked to the Canadian Football League about maybe even a merger of sorts. I don't know where you fall on that. That's an interesting dynamic that I've never thought of. If those two leagues were to work together, maybe that might be the best option for having an opportunity to succeed as far as a minor league football system.
By the way, where the Rock played his professional football?
Canada, right?
In Canada. He played in the CFL. That's right. So
I will say this, Jeffrey, you're a big spring football proponent. If anybody can make it happen, it's The Rock. I think he's very smart. And I think
he comes from a football background. He's that's to me, that matters. And the fact that he's been through the football ringer. He knows how football works. He was with the I believe it was the Calgary Stampeders of the Canadian Football League back after he moved on from the University of Miami. But yeah, I mean, if he wants to be a creative businessman, I mean, that might be something. I mean, we know that the CFL has been in some serious financial trouble since they were denied basically a bailout by the Canadian government. And they had to cancel their 2020 season. Obviously, it's the first year since I think one of the World Wars that they hadn't awarded the Grey Cup.
Right. So I think those are some things to follow there. And again, we'll see if football ever does that. They probably won't because, the NFL has all the leverage. They don't care. But look, as far as basketball is concerned, this is just part of
I think the NFL would be all too happy for somebody else to foot the bill for a developmental league.
Well, I think The Rock might, because The Rock is a big enough name, and he might use that as his way to create content, right? I could see The Rock turn the XFL into a reality show, too, on the side, starring him. Right? Like he's
starring the teams, right?
Correct. He's that big of a name. So, we'll see.
All right. So, in the meantime, the other thing that we wanted to talk about, we haven't talked about yet, Collin Smith, and actually BD had this first from 247. I think it was UCF released the CJ Walker news, but Jason BD had this one first. Collin Smith has announced he's going into the transfer portal. Collin, of course, in his time at UCF, very productive, was the leading returner from the tournament team with Taco and BJ Taylor and Aubrey Dawkins and all them. Came back for the 2019-2020 season. Had a certainly serviceable and productive year that year as a redshirt junior. Started in all 30 games in that year. But last year didn't play because of it wasn't officially disclosed. There have been some rumors that there was some sort of medical issue, but whatever it was an issue that was between Collin and the coaching staff and the administrative staff at UCF. He did walk on senior day at UCF this past season. Of course, he's from Jacksonville, went to the Bowl School and attended George Washington before coming to UCF, but he's announced he's in the transfer portal, or rather, he hasn't announced it, but it was disclosed to BD that he is there. So, what's the legacy of Collin Smith here? And I think this is pretty interesting. I mean, I didn't know. I being that he had walked on senior day, Eric, I wasn't expecting him to actually return at all. I thought that he was probably closer to hanging it up than anything, but apparently he's going to give it one more shot.
Well, and he still might. I mean, he might decide to still hang him up. I think he wants to see all his options.
Yeah.
So I'm not
average 10 points a game for his career.
Yeah. I think there's a couple things here. And this is the thing, and I think you're going to see this in every sport. With the extra year given everybody, the numbers are so whack right now. And I think from a Collin standpoint and a UCF standpoint, there was no future there. There's no guarantees Collin steps back on the court at right now. If you're UCF, you can't give up a scholarship to a guy that may or may not play. You've got recruits coming in. You've got transfers coming in. So you're going to see this across the board with all programs. You're going to see this across the board in all sports. Free agency's here, folks, in college athletics. All right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. I think number two with Collin, I don't know what his medical condition is, but it could be a situation where maybe he's not cleared to play here at UCF, but he could get cleared somewhere else. That has happened here before. There's a softball player, it's funny, with Wichita State by the name of Riley Buck, who was at UCF, played at UCF in the fall, never got cleared. She had a medical condition. UCF didn't clear her. She transferred to Wichita State. They cleared her, and she's playing at a high level, unfortunately at our expense now. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, more on that later.
But that's my point. So maybe Collin feels like I can play, but maybe UCF says, no, I don't think you can play. Or Collin feels he's done.
Or we don't want to assume the risk of you.
Correct. Right. And that's just speculation. So I think Collin's doing the right thing. He's looking at all his options. We'll see what happens. His legacy is secured at UCF. He's always going to be a part of that 2019 team that made the NCAA tournament. I'll never forget that performance against Houston on the road on national television and ESPN, where he was a big factor next to Taco Fall when they knocked off Houston and ended up their winning streak. His legacy is secured here. He's a likable guy. Maybe he also decided to transfer. He heard the news that Brian was leaving us, and he said, well, I got nobody to talk to here, so I'm just going to follow. Maybe he'll just leave him. So I wish him the best, whatever he decides. He's a great guy. Whatever he decides, it's cool. It's his decision. It's his life. I just, hope it works out for him. I think UCF will be fine. But you're going to see this in all sports where you're going to see some players that might surprise you. They're like, really? They're going to leave? Because of a couple factors. Numbers-wise, the program may don't have the numbers, and they might say, you know what, I need a new challenge. I need a new opportunity.
Right. And I second you on that because, we enjoyed Collin, not just watching him on the floor, but also talking to him off the floor. Good dude. Really did give this program everything. Took a tremendous load on his shoulders that year after the NCAA appearance where basically he was the only guy left. And I was sad to see him not play this past season because really when you look back at it, there were two things that UCF really needed this year that they didn't have. One was an extra point guard, and Tony Johnson hurt himself and was out for the year after during halftime of the first game, and an extra big, and that would have been Collin Smith, and we didn't get the chance to see that. But
no doubt. And by the way, just because guys transfer out of your program does not mean there's something wrong with your program.
Exactly, especially now,
because this is the norm now. The days of guys staying, throughout their careers, I think our days are numbered. I don't see the guys staying at a school 4 years that anymore because you have the option to depart at any moment now. So I wouldn't take it like North Carolina had a bunch of guys transferring. Kentucky had there's going to be movement every year. Look, UCF's bringing in their own guys. So this is college sports now moving forward. I know some don't like it, but that's just reality. This is reality. And again, doesn't mean that the coach is a bad problem. There's problems there. Not in this case, I don't believe that's the case at all.
And two of those guys actually came in, just recently signed. Ed Xavier Rhodes from Dallas, a 6'9" forward, 3-star recruit from Rivals, who averaged 20 points and 9 rebounds at Skyline High School last year. And then also P.J. Edwards, a guard out of North Carolina, who's a 6-footer combo guy out of Springfield, Illinois. So another 3-star. So, there's just going to be a lot of I tell you what, it just shows you how much more difficult the job is for coaches to develop their systems. You're just not going to get guys who are running the same system for 3-4 years anymore. You have to you have to really adjust what you do and make it easier for everyone to understand quickly. So I don't envy what these coaches are doing right now because it's question. The portal's here to stay.
Yep, no question. And I think, Johnny, that's the big challenge now. I mean, to me, that's part of the reason why I think Roy Williams decided to retire in North Carolina, because I don't think he could handle a transfer era, if you will, because nobody ever transferred at North Carolina. That just doesn't happen. Yeah. So, we're in a new world now in college sports.
How about Coach K, though?
He's the last of the dying breed there. And,
he adapted. Roy's 70 years old, right?
Yeah.
Coach K is what? He's in his 70s.
Yeah.
I think, right? Yeah, he's
hanging in there. He's hanging in there.
Yeah. But amazing hair for a 74-year-old. How about it? All right. All right, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk about tennis. The American Championships are on deck. UCF men's and women's tennis both have firmly established themselves as national contenders. We will update you on them and see what they've got coming up next when we return. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast with Eric and Jeff. Don't go away.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Eric and Jeff with you here on this Wednesday night. We're going to switch gears and talk to tennis. Specifically, this is the big weekend for both UCF and women's and men's tennis. But as we first look at the rankings, Eric Lopez, both teams are firmly in national contention. The men are 11th right now. They actually dropped a little bit. They were in the top 10, if I'm not mistaken, and they dropped back to 11. They're
Goddamn college
Georgia.
football committee. Screw you.
The women on the other side are, by the way, I'm looking at the coaches poll. UCF is also at 11. On the women's side, as we take a look at that, they're actually in 8th in the latest ranking. That's their best ranking of the season. Highest achieved, their highest ranking, I think, is that ever? Yeah, I think it might be the highest ranking ever for UCF women's tennis. And so now both teams head into the American Athletic Conference Championship weekend. Now, we'll start with the women. They're at 15-4 overall. They knocked off number 4 Florida State in Tallahassee on Friday. Then they came back and beat Tulsa at home on Monday. So they're riding a 3-match win streak, and they've won 8 of the last 9 coming in. But they will face the winner of number 9 Cincinnati and number 8 USF. Those two teams play at 9 a.m. on Thursday, and all these matches are taking place at the USTA Tennis Complex down in Lake Nona. And then UCF will play the winner of that match. They're the only team that has the bye because they're the number 1, and so they won't play until Friday at 12:30 p.m. across from the 5 and the 4, which is Houston and Tulane. The number 2 seed is SMU. The 3 seed is Tulsa. Quarterfinals on Saturday in the late morning, and then the final will be on ESPN Plus on Saturday. But this shapes up really good for, first talking about the women's team, this shapes up really good for them. They're in good shape. They get to play, they play a team that's already tired, right? So so I think that overall they'll be in pretty good shape as they head into the weekend at Lake Nona, no?
No doubt. I mean, I'm still blown away by the staring. I'm just staring at the number 8 ranking. Number 8.
I know.
Women's tennis.
And by the way, that's not like a human poll, right?
No.
That's the data is putting them at number 8, which is you can't stand, but I love it because it's as objective as it can get.
Well, the tennis one is the tennis one is a better formula than any other sport because it kind of goes week by week type of thing and how you fare in the match and compared to a year ago. So I'm fine with that. But here's the thing. We're the number 8 ranked team in the country. We got 2 players in the top 30 in singles, and Valeria Saleva, who's ranked 19th. Rebecca Stolmar, who's a super senior, came back for the extra year, ranked 30th. She's a double digit in wins. It's just insane how good this team is. They're the heavy favorites to win the American. They're going to be in the NCAAs, and I think the question's going to be, this team, in theory, may never have to bus or fly throughout the entire postseason.
They can just sit back and at home, sleep in their own bed because the American Championships are at Lake Nona, and so is the entire NCAA tournament.
Yeah. So if they get a proper seed, they will be here throughout, and that's a big advantage. This team's been dominant at home, and Brian Konieco is probably the hottest tennis coach out there. I do worry about that. There's tennis, for example, Texas's men's tennis job is open, so that worries me a little bit. So let's take care of our tennis programs, Terry, all right? Because this is insane. You've got, and we'll get to the men's, but the women's team has proven this is a national title contender. They have experience. They have that taste from a couple years ago when they
lost at Pepperdine, right?
Yeah, right. So that was on the road at Pepperdine too. So if this plays out, if they were to win the American and get a proper high seed, they don't have to leave anywhere. Now, my only concern, conspiracy theory says they might, because I've seen this in softball, where Oklahoma gets a lower seed because, quote unquote, the Women's College World Series is in Oklahoma City. So what they do is they seed them low enough so they go on the road in the super regionals. I hope they don't do that here with UCF, but it wouldn't shock me. So I will caution that. Some of that mumbo jumbo nonsense.
Well, I don't think it would matter in this case, right?
I hope not. It shouldn't,
because there's the middle rounds are not going to be elsewhere. It's correct. All in Orlando, so it does. There's no other site that they could be sent to.
Right. So it's huge. It's a great opportunity. It's a huge opportunity. But first things first. Take care of the conference tournament.
All right. And now the men have to do the same exact thing, by the way. Their first match starts on Friday, April 23rd. They received an automatic bid to the semifinals. They actually have an easier path. They're 19-3 overall. The reason why is because they were scheduled to play Temple, who's the number 8 in the first round, but Temple dropped out due to COVID tracking. So as it stands right now, UCF can sit at home on Thursday, watch everyone beat themselves up in the quarterfinals in the Orlando Heat, and then face the winner of Wichita State and Memphis at 3:30 p.m. on Friday, and then they would face the winner from the other side of the bracket, which includes Tulsa, USF, SMU, and Tulane in the final at 3 p.m., assuming they get through Wichita State and Memphis, of course. That would also be on ESPN+. But this really worked out for the men's tennis team in the fact that, unfortunately, we hope everyone's okay with the Temple program, obviously. But, from an on-court standpoint, one less match they got to play, one less match to get them to the conference championship. They are the favorites once again, and they are ranked 11th right now. But there's a little bit of concern here coming in, Eric. Now, we haven't heard any specifics yet, but a little bit of a scare in UCF's last match to finish up the regular season. Now, they won the match against Tulsa, who's ranked number 38, 4-1. But the key was that one, and it was at singles court number 1, where Gabe DeCamps was playing. He was leading his match and then had to retire in the middle of the match. So that's we don't know. We have no specifics about if he suffered an injury or just something went wrong.
Well, this is the second.
He won his double match with Juan Pablo Mizuki, but he was up, he won the first set 6-1, lost the second set 6-3, and then retired. So Cody Pearson ended up winning.
So there's a couple things here. This is the second time he's retired recently. He retired a few matches ago as well. Now, there's two theories of thought. Again, obviously we're not there, so we don't know what happened. There could be two factors here. One could be that he has an injury and that, you don't risk it. You just retire at that point, especially, and again,
the rest of the team has the match taken care of.
That's
We've
the
got
other thing I was
going
to say. There also could be a strategy here where, hey, if your team has got this wrapped up, we don't need to force this and play a third set. Let's just rest up, especially with the conference tournament. We'll obviously learn a lot on Friday. We'll see if he lines up, but he's got a lot at stake. Okay, because not only from a team competition, but he's the number 3 ranked player in the college tennis. So there's also a singles aspect to this, and so hopefully it's who knows. I don't think it's as serious as it looks based on the fact that he had retired recently and then played after that. So this could be, and tennis players tend to do this. We see this in the pros all the time where, look, if the guys, they know they've got a big tournament ahead next week and this match really doesn't affect them, I can just kind of retire and just not put any more pressure on my body if I don't have to. So, that's my speculation on that. But we'll see. We'll find out for sure, obviously, when they step on the court here in the conference tournament.
There has been a shakeup in the singles rankings on the men's side, too, by the way, because Gabe dropped from 4th to 7th this week.
That's that Power 5 committee again, doing its tricks.
Two guys from, interestingly enough, you mentioned the 6 players ahead of him, all from SEC schools.
Conspiracy!
Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida, Texas A&M, Florida.
SEC bias. That just means more. SEC network. Golly. But look, his health is more important. I mean, that all makes sense. But I will say, when it comes to that kind of stuff, if it gets to the singles tournament, seeding wise, it doesn't matter. Like, the best player is going to win. So whether he's 3 or 5 or 6, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a contender for that. That's the most important thing. Whatever he has, deal there.
Here's an interesting strategy. Okay. Brand has been outstanding doubles. He is actually now one of the 2 players who he's actually part of 2 ranked doubles teams. Okay, he and Bogdan Pavel right now 13th in the ITA doubles. They're 7-1 together. All right. If you look a little further down the doubles rankings, Trey and Gabe DeCamps are 8-4, and they're 32nd together. All right.
Yep.
So I think this is a really interesting play for John Roddick. I mean, he has shuffled the doubles lineup before. What do you do with Trey Hildebrand? Do you go back to him and Gabe? Do you stick with what's been working, which is Trey and? Do you mix it up depending on the matchup? I don't know, man. I think it's a really interesting play that he has here.
It is, and we had Gabe DeCamps on this show recently. That's the thing that makes this team so good is they have that versatility. Trey and Gabe are obviously real tight. They've played a long time together. You can always go back to them. But I think John will kind of play it by ear to play it by matchups, and I think go strategy and what's the best route to attack the opponent, and that's why they've been so successful. And that's why, again, I've said this. I think Gabe's going to have a future playing professionally, whether it be singles or doubles. The guy can do both. He's going to make a living playing professional tennis. I think he's the greatest men's tennis player in the history of this program. And he's got a legitimate shot to win singles. They could win doubles. That's it. I mean, you make a great point. Mm-hmm. He could win singles, doubles, and team. That's all in play. Because they all could be in the mix for the NCAA tournament. It's wild. But that goes back to my original thought of why don't freak out just because he retires there, because there's a lot of matches ahead of him here. When you're playing doubles, sometimes you kind of, I'll take this match off. This doesn't really affect my rankings or doesn't affect whatever in the big picture. So that's my hope.
Yeah, there is a lot more strategy to that. I think like other sports would look at that and be like, oh, you're not being true to the game. No, in tennis, it's a different animal.
Especially,
right?
let's say, we don't know. But in most tennis, a lot of guys have hamstring issues, especially if it's hot, things like that, cramp. So do you really want to chance it on a regular season match where, you're pretty much your team has it wrapped up and run the risk of, hurting your hamstring, let's say, further? No, you don't. So you bow out, you withdraw, and that's the smart play to do, especially at this point when you have your biggest matches ahead of you with the conference tournament and then potentially the NCAA tournament from a team competition, potentially singles competition, and doubles competition.
Right. So it's going to be a grueling next couple of weeks. So like we said, this coming weekend, Friday and Saturday for the men, or at least we hope they'll get through Saturday because they play either Memphis or Wichita State on Friday at 3:30 p.m. You can keep an eye on that on the USTA National Campus's website. They stream all the matches there. The final for the American will be on ESPN Plus, and then of course for the women's tennis team, they're playing in the mornings. Friday they play Friday against the winner of USF and Cincinnati at 12:30. Semifinal Saturday, Sunday final also on ESPN Plus. The semifinals and the previous match, and the first round match will all be on the USTA National Campus's website, which they do a wonderful job with that, by the way. James Reed was hitting us up on Twitter saying, "Man, you watching this tennis out here?"
I have.
I love it.
It's great. Like it's like
they do a really good job. Let me tell you something. From a logistics standpoint, it is hard to stream tennis and do it well.
Yeah.
And they do a wonderful job.
Well, especially in the college landscape too. I'm not just, sucking up here. There is no one that does a better job streaming college tennis than the USTA does. Like, you could pick any court you want at any time and follow the match, and they keep track of all the scores. Not a lot of colleges have that.
Into which one you want to see if it gets close.
Yeah. It's like
If there's no lag, the video quality is outstanding.
It's like the NFL ticket, but like for tennis.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll be posting the link there when it goes up. Real quick, I wanted to get to golf real quick. Women's golf finished fourth in the American Championships up in Pinehurst. Pat Pidden finished at +4. She was the top individual, and she finished tied for fourth in the individual rankings as well. A little bit, Emily Marin said that she was a little disappointed in the finish, but there's at least some possible hope that they could get into the golf regional The Golf Channel is hosting the selection show on Wednesday, April 28th. That's 1 week from when we're recording the show, April 28th. Right now, UCF looks like right now UCF's a little bubbly right now because they're 33rd overall according to GolfStat. Their comparative record, which is what GolfStat uses, is 212. They're 212 and they've won 212 of the 200. They've beaten 212 of the 244 teams that they've matched up against in tournaments overall. That's a relative percentage of about 82%, which is pretty good. That's good enough for 33rd. They played really good competition, but we just don't know right now. South Carolina has a comparative record that's better than anybody else, at least as of right now. But I think that they're going to be sweating a little bit as they head to the into the selection time. So
I just DVR'd it, 8 Eastern on the Golf Channel.
There you go. All right, now the men, if you're wondering, they just finished. Their most recent finish was in that Augusta Haskins Award Invitational, which was in early April. But they play their championship, their conference championship, April 23rd through the 25th, which is this coming weekend. It will be at Brooksville, Florida. And looking at their golf stat rankings real quick, they, right now, let me see if actually I had them pull up. Okay, they're at 64th. So they have quite a bit of work to do with a relative percentage of 71.5. So they're going to have to post a really good showing, I think, in the American Championship if they want to get themselves at least into contention. Otherwise, it'll be they may have to do like a win and in kind of thing right now. I think.
Wow,
I mean, it's going to be.
This is great. You're the Joe Lunardi of golf bracketology. I love this. This is like a talent.
The key is who do you have to beat in the men's side? It's always SMU. They're 20th right now in the country. So if you can find a way to get past them, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape, especially in this. I mean, plus you're hosting the tournament. I mean, it's in Brooksville. Why not, right?
I agreed.
Yeah,
I agreed.
So I mean, this is as good a chance as they have. I mean, this is the thing why we love tennis and golf right here. And, what we've always talked about with UCF is, a chance to be, to really dominate in those sports. By the way, Brooksville is out by Hernando. So it's out like due west of Orlando and north of Tampa, right?
It's almost like UCF, USF sharing that deal. Right? It's kind of halfway. It's
a little bit, it makes it easier for everybody to get to, although it is quite a bit out there, south of Crystal River. But yeah, it's, I think they've been there before. I forget what year, but if you live out that way, you're a UCF fan, chance to watch some good golf. So.
Well, I just hope the Golf Channel does a good job with the selection show, unlike, some of the other sports we've seen recently with the bracket. Come on, guys. A selection show should not be this complicated, please.
They try to overcomplicate it all the time, I feel like, with these other sports.
Yeah.
It's like just, hey, tell us what the whole point is. Like, let's see where everyone's playing and let's see everyone be happy.
And don't interview anybody until the full bracket's announced.
It's right.
Like, the volleyball was atrocious. They kept interviewing people after each bracket. I'm like, wait a minute. We got people's teams still trying to wait and find out if they're in.
Now, there may be a strategy behind that. There may be they may be working some production stuff in the background. They may need the time to work out that production stuff, but we don't know. Anyway. By the way, if you're looking for when the golf selection show is, like we said, April 28th, Golf Channel. Men's golf Monday, that's Division 3. I'm sorry. Division 1 men's golf, May the 5th. Also on the
following Wednesday. I love it.
Following Wednesday, yeah.
Ooh,
so
you think we get, I wonder who's hosting that? Like, which Rich Lerner? We think we get like a Rich Lerner, Steve Sands, little Brandel Chamblay?
I would like to see those guys up there. So yeah.
We got to reach out to our buddy Arthur Volpe, who works on the Golf Channel.
I was going to say Volpe should be working that.
Oh yeah.
Volpe, are you out there?
Yeah, he's busy working right now, covering some tour event probably.
I think he's up north now, isn't he?
Yes, he is up there. They moved all their stuff on him. Yeah.
They moved everything back up to Connecticut.
Yep.
So, but hey, Volpe, I hope that your first winter up north was a relatively easy one for you. So, all right, we come back, softball and baseball, and a few odds and ends here and there. Don't go away. We'll be right back. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff and Eric with you here. We're going to wrap with talking about baseball and softball. Let's first start with softball, Eric Lopez. Okay, 30-12-1 right now. All right, good record. Still tied in the top 25. They're tied for 25th in the most recent poll. But coming off of a weekend where, they played Wichita State. As you said, it was the first ever matchup between two top 25 teams in within the American Athletic Conference, in the history of the American. And UCF gets beat in 3 out of the 4, and then there was a scoreless tie on Sunday because Wichita State had to get out of Dodge because they had a flight to catch, which I'll allow you to talk about in a second. But let's talk about these first 3 games.
Yeah.
Boy, this offense really, after they walloped Florida in Gainesville, every which way but loose, they get shut out in the first 2 games, Friday and then the first game on Saturday before they lose 5-2 in the second game on Saturday. What in the world happened here?
It's a good question. You're not the first to have asked. I've had a lot of questions about that, especially on message boards. People have asked. Look, it was surprising. I mean, first of all, Wichita State has a good pitching staff. Bailey Lang, who's their ace lefty, is like tremendous. She's probably the number 2 choice for pitcher of the year in the league behind South Florida's Georgina Korick. And she gave UCF fits when she was healthy 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I think she's a bad matchup for UCF. UCF has not really seen lefties this year. So that's one part of it. Number 2, and we didn't get into this last week because obviously they had beaten Florida and the flat tire and all that. They don't have their leadoff hitter anymore in Kennedy Searcy. Kennedy Searcy got hurt in Greenville in East Carolina going for a foul ball. She's out for the season, basically. That hurts. That is a huge loss. She has been the rock solid leadoff hitter. She was the one that led them in steals. She gets on base, sets the table for the big bats. To me, that's a huge loss. They now have to replace that production in left field and in the leadoff spot. And they don't think they know yet what they want to do with the leadoff spot. They tried Justine Molina for a couple games. They've tried Kira Klarkowski. They've tried Denali Shawpacker. They haven't gotten.
Denali actually was a leadoff hitter the last couple years, wasn't she?
She's played some leadoff, and that would be my pick to be the front runner. But again, it depends on certain matchups, right? Because Coach Ball Malone is very much into advanced analytics, so it depends on the matchups. And one of the things about the Lang matchup that's a bad matchup is it really takes Shawpacker out of that equation because of the lefty-lefty situation. So that's a thing they have to figure out here is who is their leadoff hitter moving forward, who steps up in that spot from that production. That really, I think it's because she was like an energy one. You could just sense the energy when she was at the plate. She was a havoc in the base pads. And I thought everybody fed off of that. So that's the other part of it. The other one is Georgia Blair has been struggling. And as she goes, a lot of times so does the rest of the offense. And when she struggles, they struggle. So, you put all that together, and I think you saw what happened over against Wichita State. And I think it got a little mental at times there. They didn't hit timely hitting. They had opportunities to score, especially in the Sunday's game. Holy moly. Mm-hmm. They didn't have timely hitting. And, that was tough. It's disappointing. I get it. I understand the frustration out there. It was tough to see. Wichita State's very good. But you're right. I mean, it was disappointing that the offense was kind of the reason they lost. Because I thought outside of the first game, per se, I thought the pitching was fine against the Wichita offense, especially the 2 of the 4 games. But the offense just didn't show. And, it's a tough one. Give Wichita State. They outplayed them. And I thought and here's the other thing. Wichita State has a lot of players from the 2018 team that literally played in the last game of the regular season for a conference championship in Tampa against South Florida, and they lost that game. Mm-hmm. And I've spoken to their head coach, Christy Breadbender, about that and some of their players, like Riley Buck, who I mentioned earlier in the show, who has killed UCF pitching since she's been at Wichita State, probably taking out her frustrations for the UCF medical staff.
Yeah, there's a little bit more behind that, I think, than maybe she's
great
willing
kid
to
though. By the way, great kid. It's a great story. So I don't want to, I understand. Great kid. Very happy for her.
Great kid. She's totally killing us right now.
She is. But they were one win away from winning the regular season title. It was a winner take all, and they have that pain, and that team has that chip on their shoulder from that experience. This UCF team has not experienced that in conference play. You think about it, over the last few years, they have not been in the mix for the regular season title. Not this group. They haven't won a conference tournament, a championship since 2015. They haven't made the NCAA tournament since 2016. This group,
it would have been last year, but
would have been correct. But we didn't get to it. They haven't even won a conference tournament game since 2016. So this group has never won a conference tournament game, let alone an NCAA tournament appearance. So I think what happens is they put too much pressure on themselves when they're in conference versus you run into a Wichita team that has that experience they went through in 2018 where they were a win away from winning the regular season title and got to a regional final in Arkansas. They have more experience than UCF does when it comes to these type of big series. And I think that was a factor in this series, Wichita State winning. And I call it intangibles, call it mental, whatever. That's, I think, played a factor in that. And I think the thing you take out of it is you hope that UCF learned from that. You hope they learned from that experience and they improve and get better. And I think they did. I thought that Sunday game, they outplayed Wichita State. They had a couple of base running mistakes, in particular in the bottom of the sixth, runner at third didn't tagged up too early on a fly ball. Otherwise, they win that game 1-0. They literally ran out of time in the 11th inning. I thought they outplayed them, and I think in the long run that'll benefit them if they see Wichita State again in the conference tournament. But I think the factors I just brought up, you add all that up, and oh, by the way, Wichita State's really good, adds up to what we saw.
Now, this game on Sunday that ended in the scoreless tie, they were in the 10th inning. Aaliyah White was fabulous.
Incredible.
But describe for me the ending here.
Oh, boy. So let's piggyback here. You mentioned the 10th inning. So Christy Breadbender, this was known before the series. They moved up the game to 11 a.m. because Wichita State has a flight to catch at 2 o'clock. They have a flight to catch to get back to Wichita from Orlando, which is not the easiest flights to make happen. So the drop dead time is 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. So they moved up to 11 o'clock. Who's thinking that this game's going to go 3 hours, Well,
exactly nobody.
Right. So I remember, and I'm mentioning this on the broadcast, they get to the 10th inning, and I remember Coach Breadbender and Coach Ball Malone had a lengthy conversation. I think it was in the 10th inning, somewhere in the 10th inning, in between innings, a lengthy conversation. And I knew what it was about, which was, do we go ahead and play the 11th inning or do we not? Because we're getting close to the clock now. And it's around 1:50. So they decide to play the 11th. Wichita State, and in fact, from what I have been told, it was Wichita State that wanted to play the 11th inning, not necessarily UCF, because UCF thought, 10 minutes, can we really get a full inning in? Right. Wichita's like, no, we want to play. Okay. So they play the 11th. Wichita State goes down in order. UCF comes to the plate. They get a hit by pitch. They make a fly out, and then as far as it hits a single, it's first and third. And as it gets to about 2 o'clock, 0.48.
First and third and one out, right?
One out in the bottom of the 11th, 2 o'clock. And I'm watching this, 2 o'clock, 48 seconds. Christy Breadbender and the Wichita staff comes out of the dugout basically saying, oh, clock's done. The umpires look at them, and they're like, oh, that's right. It's 2 o'clock. Boom. Drop dead time. Game over. That's kind of what happened. Ironically enough, my broadcast partner for the game was Alex Powers, two-time All-American at Florida State. She was a part of maybe the most infamous tie in the history of Division I college softball. It took place in California a few years ago. Michigan played Florida State. It ended in a tie, and both teams nearly got into a fight over it because they were accusing, and I want to say, I think it was I think Florida State had the flight to, I don't remember who had the flight to catch, but the other team was literally angry because they were threatening to score, and they're like, you can't leave, you can't play another 2 minutes, and they nearly got to blows. And that's why it's probably the most famous one. There's some bad blood there. Like, I don't think those two programs have played since. So here's the deal. Technically, by rule, they were right. Everything was correct. There was nobody
It just so happened that that's how it worked out.
It just worked out. Drop dead time. And Alex has said this most of the time. It's literally 2 o'clock. It's a little different than baseball. Baseball has a drop dead time, and we've witnessed this recently with UCF baseball at Troy, where they ran out. They usually in baseball try to finish the inning. They don't leave it midway. Softball is a lot more gray. See, and this is the problem that softball gets themselves into a lot of times. A lot of this stuff is gray. A lot of this stuff depends on the two coaches and what they agree. Do they agree on an exact stop time? Is there a wiggle room? Some coaches will will want to finish the inning. Some don't. But
I was going to say, do they normally agree that, listen, when 2 o'clock hits, we finish the inning and that's it?
Correct. And I think,
but in this case, it didn't happen.
In that case, I mean, I think they agreed to 2 o'clock. Now, was it, could they have played another? There's an ethical side, in my opinion, is do you finish it out? Do you finish it out? Because Alex said a player
You're in the bottom of the 11th,
right? Just finish the game. Because some other coaches might have said, you know what, we're going to play this game and just finish it out. Baseball would have done that. Softball doesn't. In my opinion, this should be taken out of the coach's hand. There should be a rule. If I was in charge of softball, which some would say I should, I would make a rule. If you start an inning, you need to finish it. You can't have this halfway, and because it leaves open to gamesmanship. And look at how it looks. It looks like Wichita State ducked out of a bad situation, and maybe they did. But this also works both ways. Because
but if they didn't, they end up looking bad.
Correct.
And that sucks for them.
Correct. And this works both ways because let's say Wichita State scores a couple runs in the top half of the 11th. Who's to say that a UCF doesn't kill time? All right?
Right.
Kill time to make sure they get to 2 o'clock, and then that inning is nullified. So that's why there's so many poke holes in this. In my opinion, it should be a rule. Take it out of the coach's hands. Hell, take it out of the umpire's hands because they're clueless. You can't read clock. Take it out of their hands and make a rule, which is if you agree, let's say, if the coaches agree to play the 11th inning, you have to finish the inning. You cannot end the game in the middle of the inning. That's what the rule I would make, because here's the bottom line. Do you think Wichita State was going to miss their flight if that game went 5 extra minutes, which is really what was going to happen? Either UCF's going to win that game or they're going to make 2 outs within 5 minutes. Do you really think they're going to miss a flight in 5 minutes? And by the way, who really in their right mind would want to leave Orlando to go back to Wichita? Come on. I mean, seriously. So, that's my rule. I would make that rule permanent for softball, where you have to finish the inning. I think it's a bad look for the sport. I think it's bad. But again, I want to emphasize, it's not like they didn't mislead UCF. Both sides knew what was going on. So it wasn't like they were blindsided.
This was Murphy's Law. Everything that could have gone wrong did. The game went 11 innings. It took 3 hours. Nobody scored. Both teams had their opportunities and failed to capitalize. Right. And then lo and behold, they weren't thinking it would go this long, but they were like, just in case it does, you know what, we'll do. Well, guess what? Look what happened. So
another thing to bring up, because some people have brought this up too, the international rule. Why didn't they play the international rule? Talking to coaches across about this, first of all, the American, wait till you hear this, Jeffrey. This is kooky. But
okay,
on a getaway day, when there's a drop dead time, 99% of coaches at that point would rather just play to the clock than play to the international rule. So in other words, you're not
okay. So I think that's wrong.
Well, I'm just telling what coach. I'm not saying. I hear you, because there was a part, and this is where I blame the league a little bit.
If the whole objective is to finish the game, right? Yes. What's the quickest way to finish the game? The international tiebreaker.
Correct. Yeah.
Finish the game.
I thought that, and I mentioned that on the air, because here's the goofy thing about this, and I found this out after the fact from other coaches in the league. So the American, and we saw this with baseball, so we'll get to that when we talk baseball. Mm-hmm. The American has adopted this year the international rule, but it's and I can't speak for baseball, but
this is the runner on second to start the
runner second. However, it's a mandatory thing for double headers, which is what you saw in baseball.
Makes sense.
We should have seen it in Greenville when UCF played East Carolina and they went 10 innings. They were supposed to play the international rule in the top of the 10th. One problem: the umpires and the coaches forgot about it.
Oh God.
So they played.
No.
They did. So they played the 10th inning. Thankfully, it worked out for UCF because they scored the runs in the 10th inning and they won the game. But it was hilarious because the umpires went to the coaches in the middle of the top of the 10th after the
and they were like, should we have a runner on second here?
Right. And UCF,
you guys remember?
Yeah, UCF's like, no, because we just played the top of the 10th without one. So,
wow.
So by rule, in double headers, they're supposed to play the international rule. In single games, it's up to the coaches.
See, this is where it gets
great.
It gets muddy. It's real muddy.
I agree.
Because either, and I recognize the whole desire for the coaches, because the coaches usually have power here in the meetings in the conference, right? Of like, how do we set the rules? What do we want to do? But in this case, this is one of those cases where I think the coaches in general have too much power, where they can agree on the rules of a game beforehand. To me, it's either you go all in or you don't in conference play. Either you have the international tiebreaker for every game or you don't have it at all. We don't decide, willy-nilly prior to a game, okay, let's do it this time. No.
Right.
Either do it or not. Now, I'm in favor of it, as you know.
Yeah.
I understand the arguments against it, but I think especially on a getaway day, it should certainly be mandatory, but it should just be mandatory across the board, no matter what day it is.
But the problem is not a lot of coaches want it. And I think the reason this has been implemented is because of the protocols. It's the protocols.
But I don't understand that. If the whole objective of the protocols is to spend as little time being in contact with people as possible, end the game sooner.
I agree. The doubleheader, the single game. Look, I would not have been shocked if they would have used the international rule on game. I'm just telling you, in talking to other coaches, they do not play an international rule if there's a drop dead time. They don't want to do it, and for whatever the reason. So that's the other thing is too. By the way. They could have played this game at 10 a.m. and Wichita said no. They could have got an extra hour.
And could have played it at 9.
I don't know about 9. I've heard 10 a.m. is kind of the earliest you could play it. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
But the point is that would have given you an extra hour. Now, who knows? Maybe we'd still be playing. But I know for a fact UCF wanted to play it. They would have played it at 10 a.m. and given themselves an extra hour. This goes back to what time was the Wichita flight? And that's why there's that lack of trust type of deal. Like, couldn't it, wait 5 minutes? There should be a better job of, hey, we're not in a rush to leave at 2:00. Maybe we could go 3:00 or something. It's unfortunate. A lot of people have opinions about it. It's disappointing. In the end, if UCF has better base running earlier in the game, we wouldn't even be talking about it.
Fair. Totally fair. The one thing that we're not talking about, unfortunately, is that game with Team USA that was supposed to happen on Tuesday at 5:00. I know, I hate to bring it up to you, but
thanks.
It was a bummer, obviously, that it didn't happen. Right? It's because of the rain all day on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Field was unplayable, obviously, but there was some good that came out of it. Right? The team UCF got to spend some time with Team USA. They got to meet some of their heroes. There were some photos of the two teams hanging out in the Nicholson Fieldhouse, and a former UCF player. It turned out to be quite instrumental in making this all happen.
Yeah, Stephanie Best, who owns Pro Swings, obviously her own business. I think helped make all that happen. Mm-hmm. So now Team USA got some training to do in her facility, which is really a big deal for her. Think about that. She's hosting the U.S. Olympic team.
Yeah.
That's pretty big accomplishment there. So it turned a positive there. Awesome that the girls get to meet them and they'll say that and they took a photo. So that's a good thing. It stings because that would have been cool to see them play a few innings. But obviously Mother Nature had different ideas. So it is what it is. And hopefully that'll be a positive for them moving forward. Now they go to Memphis and they can bounce back and have a good series against Memphis. And look, they're fine. Here's the thing. Conference rise, that took a sting. They're probably not going to win the conference regular season title. However, they're still in the 20s in RPI. They actually moved up in the RPI there, Jeffrey, your favorite. They moved up. They moved up despite going 0-3-1. So, all right.
We got to work on that math a little bit, boys.
I got to
figure this one out.
But nonetheless, they're in the great shape to make the tournament. which they haven't done since 2016. And they're going to play Memphis here. I think this is a good opportunity this weekend for this offense to kind of bounce back, get some answers, clean some things up. Then you got Ole Miss, which is a big series in 2 weeks, and then obviously South Florida to end the regular season. So you still got important games. You're in good shape. The body of work they've built up, okay, kind of helped them get this, gave them some space for a mulligan that they had, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, right now they're in fourth in the conference at 9-6-1.
Yeah.
They're behind Tulsa, USF, and Wichita. Ahead of Houston, East Carolina, and Memphis. Where would you feel that they should finish in this last 6 games in conference, last 8 games in conference? Where would you want them to finish in conference for you to be comfortable where they are?
Top 3. I think
three?
top
Okay.
3. I think it's the big series this weekend is South Florida at Wichita State. I think the winner of that series likely wins the regular season title. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're UCF, you're actually rooting for South Florida to give that slim chance you have. You need South Florida to beat Wichita State and have it all come down to the last weekend. But I think top 3, if UCF were to take care of business, is the likely scenario there, which is fine. And the question becomes, do you rather play? Are you going to be in the draw with Wichita State in Tulsa, or are you going to be in the draw with South Florida potentially? What you want to do, actually, you want to avoid playing Tulsa, and I'm not even making. You want to avoid playing Tulsa in the first round, and that is likely going to be a 4-5, in my opinion. Tulsa is probably going to be a 4 or a 5. So if you're UCF, you don't want to be in that situation where you're playing Tulsa in the opening round at Tulsa. We know how that goes. Nothing go well. You'd rather be a 2 or a 3. I mean, obviously you want to be a 1.
Well,
Even if you're not
right
a 1,
now UCF would play. Right now UCF would play Houston.
That's
if I'm
fine.
not mistaken. That's the
that's
4-5
for now.
Tulsa
Right.
Tulsa ECU is the 3-6. USF Memphis is the 2-7, and then Wichita would get the bye.
Correct.
Right?
That's how it would play out. 2 and 3. Houston's the tougher matchup. It's a rivalry there. I would rather play ECU. I would rather play Memphis for sure. But at the end of the day, you just got to play well. If you play well, it doesn't matter. You're going to be fine. If you don't play well, you're going to get beat. So let's just play well, and let's see if they can fix some things and get healthy against a Memphis team that has struggled this season. So I'm curious to see how they come out this week and maybe hopefully take out some frustrations.
Well, UCF swept Houston earlier this season.
Yeah,
so,
and it was not easy. There was 2 walk-offs in that 4-game series. So
true, could have used one of them the past weekend. All right, so that's UCF softball right now. All right, that brings us over to baseball. The Knights are actually, they're starting to kind of pick things up a little bit here in terms of baseball. In 4th place in the conference, 7-5 in the league, 17-19 overall. There are only, by the way, Eric, there are only 3 teams in the American that are above 500 overall.
It's wild,
man. It's the top 3 teams. ECU, obviously, Tulane and Wichita State. And UCF, right now, don't look now, folks, but they won 3 out of 4 against South Florida, swept the doubleheader on Friday, split the doubleheader on Saturday. They got clobbered in the last game, but who cares? And, right now they've won, 4 of their last 6, but they have this huge test against East Carolina in Greenville coming up. Doubleheader Friday, and then a Saturday and a Sunday. Everything's on ESPN Plus, except for the Sunday game. For some reason, is not being shown on ESPN Plus. At least that's what it says right now. But we'll double check that. But hey, look, this is a really good ECU team that's coming in, and has 23rd in the country on bases. Pitching staff is working really well. But this is a big team against Cliff in the East. If UCF can somehow turn the ship here and make this happen, really boost their confidence.
It could. It could. I mean, boy, this feels weird, first of all, to do a baseball segment without Murph. When was the last time we did a baseball segment without Murph? This feels strange. Like, I feel I'm just going to
remember the last time.
I'm just going to call you Murph the rest of the segment just so we can feel normal again. Look, ECU is very good. Like, here's the thing about this team, though. This is the same team that beat Ole Miss 2 out of 3 in Oxford, right? So, I mean, they're capable. If they can get a game, 2 games out of ECU, I would take it right now to the bank. I would be thrilled.
2 out of 4.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big positive to win 3 out of 4 against South Florida. One of them was that 10th inning where they, the international rule, which they put in the 10th inning, by the way. The international rule starts in the 10th inning for both baseball and softball. It was important for them to get 3 out of 4.
That makes sense.
Well, they want to, play it out an extra inning, But so it's big that they finally won a series. Maybe that gives them that confidence boost. I'm going to be curious. Obviously, to me, if UCF has a shot to win games, you got to go with Colton Gordon, right? I mean, you got to win his start. He's the reigning pitcher of the week. He's the ace. Can they go in there and take that first game of that double? I think it's a doubleheader Friday, if I'm not right. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right. Doubleheader Friday.
If you can get a split that first day, man, that's huge. And then maybe help turns around. Look, unfortunately, unlike softball, baseball doesn't have a lot of room for error. Like their RPI is 136. So they're likely – this is going to be their last really marquee series they're going to be able to play because the league is kind of down this year. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Tulane right now is in second place after they swept Wichita State. They're kind of the second team in the tournament, according to Kendall Rogers, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. By the way, Tulane swept Wichita State. Wichita State's the number 2 team in the conference in most of these hitting categories.
Right.
By the way. Amazing what Tulane did to them.
It's a weird year for the league, even though they're number 5. They're, depending on which the RPI has them as a 6-rated conference, which for them is down. They're usually higher than that.
Usually 4th.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what to expect here. I know everybody expects ECU to clobber them, and they might. I'm not going to say they may not. But if they can get – I think the first game is huge with Colton Gordon. If you can get that win, it was good to see some of the offensive guys for UCF step up. It's so frustrating that last game. I know you said it didn't matter, but man, you would have liked them to be competitive there. It just kind of left a real bad taste in your mouth after getting 3 wins. But
fair.
If you can get a win with Colton and get a split that first day, now hey, you feel good about them. You're the first team to beat ECU. Maybe that gives you that confidence. My concern is if you don't win the Colton Gordon start, and now all of a sudden you lose that doubleheader, now it kind of snowballs. Because ECU is the type of team that just kind of, once they get on top of you, they just jump on you. And that's Cliff's style. We've known Cliff for a long time since he's been here at UCF, and he's an aggressive guy. And when he's got a team down, they're going to make sure they kind of, they do a great job of closing teams out. When they smell the sweep, they usually close teams out. So that's why I think the Colton Gordon game is critical for UCF to win that game. Otherwise, it could be a long weekend in Greenville.
Some interesting notes on these two teams, by the way. ECU right now leading the conference in batting average, slugging percentage, on-base percentage as a team. By the way, these are the 2 top teams in the American in team on-base percentage. ECU is at 395. UCF is at 371. 2 of the top 3 in total runs scored. UCF's at 211, ECU at 222. 2 of the top 3 in hits, ECU at 321, UCF at 312. So I expect there to be a lot of offense this week, actually, between these 2 squads. I think the X factor is going to be, what does ECU's pitching staff do? Right now their pitching staff has been excellent the entire year. They're first in the conference in ERA, first in the conference in batting, first in the conference in pitching. There you go.
That's my concern. That's my concern. If this becomes a bullpen series, I think ECU might have the edge here.
Yeah, and best and ECU's pitchers have allowed the lowest opponent's batting average, 225 so far this season. So yeah, this is what do they do? ECU in terms of there's a possibility that they might take UCF fairly lightly here. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think Cliff Godwin's a better coach than that.
Yeah, I feel like Cliff always circles UCF for many reasons. So I have a feeling
for more than one reason.
But look, man, they're really good. But this team is kind of weird. They'll rise to the occasion when you least expect it. I mean, a couple years ago they played in Greenville, and there was a couple of walk-offs that decided that series. So I think it'll be tight. I agree with you. But again, I got to emphasize, I really do think UCF has to win the Colton Gordon start. Because if you can win that, I think that builds confidence. It continues the momentum you built from the USF series. If Colton Gordon gets roughed up and if they lose and you're digging yourself a hole in this series, I think it could go an avalanche. I mean, so we'll see. I mean, remember, Colton Gordon set the tone in Oxford when he beat Ole Miss, and you saw how well they played. I really do think that's the factor because I don't believe UCF can win a bullpen series this year. If this was last year, I would say a different tone. But I don't think you want to get into a bullpen series here against East Carolina because I think ECU has the edge there. So it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. maybe UCF could be that first team to knock off ECU. Interestingly, ECU hasn't played. Remember, their series last week against Houston got postponed because Houston dealt with has got some COVID issues.
Yeah. Name to watch for ECU pitcher Jake Kuchmaner. He pitched.
He's been there 100 years, man.
Yeah, he's been there for a while. He last pitched for them on this past Saturday against Memphis. But
it's a name, last name familiar.
Should be a familiar name to you because his sister Mackenzie was the libero for UCF volleyball in 2019. She was a grad student, super senior, came over from North Carolina State, won a conference title for UCF, filling the admittedly large shoes of Jordan Pingle, and led UCF to a conference championship. So, but Jake is still there, and I think they're expecting to throw on Saturday. I'm not 100% sure on that. We'll double check on their rotation, but he did pitch on Saturday against Memphis in his last start through 4 2/3. Gave up 3 earned runs, walked 2, and struck out once. He's been a little up and down this year, Jake has, but still very good, very good pitcher. Highly touted in the preseason, junior out of Waxhaw, North Carolina. So another guy to keep in mind on that one. All right, so that'll wrap it for us. Eric, we got a lot of stuff that's coming up this week, man. We have the American for men's golf. We have the American for tennis. What are you going to be watching the most closely? The tennis? I know how much you're a tennis guy here.
Yeah, I'm going to watch the tennis. Obviously, I want to see how if Gabe DeCamps, gets on the court, how he looks, things like that. I think tennis is the big story here. Tennis is a huge story here. How did they finish strong? Can he win the conference tournament? When is the selection shows for tennis? Because I think that's going to we'll learn a lot about that. But yeah, can they win both programs win the conference championship at home and maybe cement themselves as a high national seed and not have to travel during the NCAA tournament? I think that's the big storyline from a tennis standpoint. Obviously, golf will wait and see. We'll see if softball can bounce back against Memphis. I think it's critical that they do take care of business there. And I think baseball, we'll see. They have the talent to beat ECU. Can they show up and put a quality game together, to beat East Carolina? We'll see. This team has been so bizarre up and down, but maybe, Love Lady teams usually finish strong. They usually make a second half push. Could we be the beginning here of a second half push for UCF? I think we'll find that answer out after this weekend in Greenville.
Tennis selection shows, by the way, they're both on Monday, May the 3rd, women at 6 and men's at 6:30.
Man, everybody waiting here. Everybody's taking the week off here next week. Yeah. Man, I just want to get up for the NFL draft, I guess.
One thing I wanted to give a quick shout out to. Saturday, the Knights track and field team hosts the UCF Knights Invite one-day event at the UCF track and soccer complex, I should say, by the way. And if I'm not mistaken, I just want to double check this before we go here.
Renaya Jones, the reigning athlete of the week in track and field there for the American. Could be the next Anne-Marie Blaney, if you will, among others. They got a couple of them there.
Double check me on that one because it's a 2-day event. It's Friday and Saturday.
That's correct.
At the track and soccer complex. And then after that, they have one more event, the UNF Invitational in Jacksonville, before the American Championships in mid-May. So this is the big tune-up time for UCF track and field. And then one other thing, rowing. They are at the Lake Wheeler Invite this weekend as well. And then after that event, they have nothing going on until the middle of May for the American Championships as well. So this is one more tune-up for the rowing team before they aim for their 6th consecutive American Athletic Conference Championship. This is they're going to be facing Duke on Friday and then North Carolina on Saturday, and that's in Lake Wheeler, North Carolina. So
mayhem, baby. It's going to be mayhem. You could have rowing, you got tennis, golf.
Hey, we thought that it would be like this, man.
Getting close, man. Big finishes here. That's going to be big. Yep. It's going to be big.
Lake,
Boy, I felt weird, though. I got to tell you, I felt weird doing a baseball segment without Murph. Felt very weird, and that was awkward. But
I thought you did good. I thought you did solid job.
Tough. It was kind of like
Lake Wheeler, by the way, south of Raleigh, I should say, for you Unite fans in the Triangle.
That's good. I felt like the Chicago Bulls in '99 there, like Tim Floyd following Phil Jackson. I felt like that's what I felt like doing that baseball.
You're being too hard on yourself. Too hard on yourself. I thought it was at least a solid Larry Coker job. He won some games. He won some games after. Maybe Murph gets the credit for it, but you held your own there for a little while.
We'll see. Dylan Moore, man, the pressure's on you, Dylan Moore.
Dylan Moore, yeah. Hey, well, did you see those 2 web gems he had over the weekend?
Yeah, he needs to start
Holy
hitting.
moly.
I've got him in my fantasy league. He needs to start hitting. I mean, let's go. He's got to start hitting. He had a home run recently, but yeah, no.
What's he hitting right now?
Not good. He's under 200. I know that.
Hey,
come on, Dylan.
Let's see. What's it?
We believe in you.
I got him pulled up right now. Man, he's hitting 115. Is that even right?
Do you believe the NFL drafts next week, by the way? That is wild. Big. I mean, we could have 3 guys drafted real quickly.
This spring is flying by. So we'll be previewing that next weekend as well. We'll be getting Drew back in here to talk about the NFL draft, any developments leading up to it. We'll be previewing. We'll be having a couple more previews going up before the NFL draft. We got one on Aaron Robinson already up, as well as one on Richie Grant. Thanks to Luke Saris for putting that together. Thanks to Jeremy Brenner for putting together the newsletter, as he always does on weekdays. Make sure you subscribe to that. And a special welcome to Bryson Turner, who's joining us. Actually, you may have seen him quite a bit on our night shift shows as a commenter. Well, I've known Bryson for a long time, ever since he was a high schooler, and he's going to join us to do a little work covering basically all sports that we can. Any story that comes up, he's going to be sort of our Swiss Army knife, and I'm really happy to bring him on. He's an outstanding writer and an extraordinarily thorough reporter, and has been for a very long time. So congrats to Bryson. Glad to bring him on. And I'll be setting my alerts to see if Brian Murphy on MLB.com publishes anything. Publishes anything at all, as you should too, by the way.
Knowing Murph, I'm going MLB.com just to make sure. He sometimes may not, he likes to kind of hide.
When are we over under, Eric, on when we see Brian's first MLB.com homepage feature?
I would say within a week or two. Once he gets the hang of everything. Yeah, I would say.
Okay.
By the way, a great stat, or note. All right. Brian Murphy joins Juan Toribio. They both were on the UCF beat in 2017 for the national championship season. Both of them now work at MLB.com. How about that?
There you go.
Juan Toribio now is covering the Dodgers for MLB.com. And here's Murph now getting this kind of feet wet on MLB.com. I mean, they're both doing better than that head coach that left to UCF. So, I mean, good Lord. Who knew?
Not bad, right? But hey, we're all so proud of Murph, and we're happy for what he's done. He's going to do great on MLB on MLB.com, and our hope is that we can drag him back here to comment on whatever the heck he wants.
Knowing Murph, he's got a clock right. He's just counting down to the Oscars. He's counting down to the Oscars. He's,
we need a baseball movie feature from Murph on MLB.
We'll see if we can get it out of him. He might be in Oscar heaven right now. Who knows?
Right. All right. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. You can also follow us individually, Jeff_Sharon, Eric Lopez, Elo.
He also might be depressed about the Yankees right now, who are abysmal, by the way.
Yeah, it's bad. Woo. It's bad. I don't want to talk about it anymore. You can follow us. If you don't subscribe to us, you should. Make sure you subscribe to us on... if you're on an iOS device, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. If you're on Android, you can subscribe to it via Spotify. If you already subscribe, awesome. Please leave us a rating and a comment, of course. And make sure you tell your UCF friends all about us, too, and have them download our shows and ask them to download our shows and subscribe to us as well, because your word of mouth means a lot to us, and I'm sure it means a lot to us, and we really appreciate all the support that you, the fans, have given us throughout these 5 years that we've been doing this now, Eric Lopez. It's been quite some time, but this continues to be fun. So for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, for Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We will catch you later next week.